Greetings, welcome to Chapter 18, the imperative mood. Remember that Vera verb has a bit of moodiness about her. That's why she's wearing the muumuu dress. And just to remind you, what is a mood when we are talking about Greek? It is an explanation for how something is being said. So just by reminder, you spent most of the term looking at the indicative mood, which stated a fact. This did happen. Or after that, we looked at the subjunctive mood more recently, which is the mood of probability, the idea that something may happen. The last mood that we're going to be looking at in this course is the imperative mood, and this is the mood of command. This is the mood in which they tell someone to do something. Now, the imperative mood, three things that you probably want to be aware of before we get started looking at the paradigms. First of all, the imperative only appears in the present and the aorist tenses. So that means you don't have to worry about the imperfect, you don't have to worry about the future, and you don't have to worry about the perfect. Okay? Also keep in mind that everything I'm going to be teaching you in this lesson today does not bleed over into the area of participles. Okay? This is only for regular verbs in the present and the aorist tense, and it is only for when they are going to be doing the indicative mood. Secondly, the imperative mood only uses the second and third person. We do not have the first person, which means I, in either the singular or in the plural, which means we, because typically one does not give themselves commands to do something. Normally you're saying you, or just simply do this, or we're actually saying let this person do this. So everything we're going to look at today is only going to be relegated to the second and third person. Finally, in order to negate a imperative mood, you're going to want to have the negative may, the negative particle may, which, while it won't show up at all times, it will be one clue to help you recognize that you're dealing with the imperative mood. With that in mind, let's take a look at the paradigms. Looking at the first one, here is your present active imperative. Notice that we only have a second and a third person, just as I told you in the imperative there is no first person, but we do have it in both singular and plural. Looking at the second person singular, you see that our ending there is just simply an epsilon. So our ending there is simply lue. Okay? And so in the present active imperative, that would be translated simply as loose. In the third person singular, we have the ending epsilon tau omega, which then equals with the stem luato, okay, which then would make the translation let her or him or it loose. And whenever you are going to be dealing with the third person in the imperative mood, you're always going to want to introduce your translation with the words let it, or as you're going to see in a moment, let them in the plural. In the second person plural, you see we have luete, which is the same exact ending that you have in the present active indicative mood. So that means that the second person plural in both the indicative and the imperative look virtually the same. How then will you tell the difference? Context will be your guide. Finally, on here, luetosan in the third person plural, and luetosan would be let them loose. Now, you may have noticed that we have a present active imperative, which means that we also have a present middle passive imperative. And so, again, the translation is going to follow the same, all right, as far as only being in the second and the third person, no first person. But notice in the singular, we've got luu, which in the middle passive, or you would simply just have passive be loosed. Or in the third person singular, luestho, let her, him, or it, and you got to get that passive in there, be loosed. Notice that I'm not bothering to translate the middle here because more often than not you will not see the middle. You'll only be doing it with the passive. In the plural middle passive, we've got luestha, which we would say be loosed or be loosened, which once again is the same exact ending that you would have in the present middle passive indicative. Once again, context will have to be your guide as to whether or not you're dealing with the indicative or the imperative. Finally, esthosan, let them be loosed. Okay? And what you're going to notice here is, all right, again, esthosan, let them be loosed, because it's again in the passive. Now, take a look at this paradigm. And what I want you to begin to notice is that in each of these paradigms I'm going to introduce to you today, you can basically observe that the second person singular imperative will always have a unique ending. All right, but then after that, the third person singular, the second person plural, and the third person plural are all going to be very similar, but they'll have some slight differences that'll help you recognize which part of speech you're talking about. So let me back up and show you what I mean. Here, it's lu-eh. That's your unique ending there for the second person singular, and then after that let me start again. Lu'eh, lu'eto, lu'eta, lu'etosan. Now let's look at the middle passive. Lu'u, there's your unique one, but then lu'estho, lu'estha, lu'esthosan. All right, your estho here in the third person singular in the active voice was eto. In the second person plural, your estha here in the active is eta. And then here, your esthosan in your active is etosan. But of course, now in the middle, the theta has come in and it's estho, estha, esthosan. So as we go through this, you're going to begin to notice that, again, while the second person singular has its own unique ending, the third person singular, the second person plural, and the third person plural are all very close, even sound similar, just with some slight variations. Let's look at the aorist active imperative. Once again, notice that your second person singular, lusan, has a unique ending. Notice that in the aorist imperative we have our sigma alpha, our telltale sign that we're dealing with the aorist tense. We have that here, except again, of course, in the second person singular, which is unique. And notice here, lusan, even though it's in the aorist, it's translated virtually the same way as the present tense. You do not say lucid, as if you're doing in the past, because you can't command something in the past. So you just simply say loose, as opposed to where you had lu'eh in the present active as the loose. This is also loose. The difference is a present imperative is ongoing action. It's like stop doing this, whereas lusa is a direct command. Just stop. Okay? We'll look more at this later on in Greek 3. But again, let's take a look here. I'll read through them. Lusan, lusato, lusata, lusatosan. Again, notice how all the three, apart from the second person singular, have a similar pattern to the paradigms you've seen so far. Helping you know that you're dealing with the aorist tense is your sigma alpha. Let's take a look at the middle passive. Now, the second person singular of the middle passive already is going to be a potential for confusion, because you'll notice that it's lusai. Okay, and of course, lusai here looks exactly like your aorist infinitive. How are you going to tell the difference? Context. But I will also tell you this: that it will be rare that you see an aorist middle imperative that is loose for yourself. So don't get too nervous. Notice, however, then the pattern follows out: lusasto, lusasta, lusastosan. All right. Again, it sounds like the previous middle pattern that you saw for the present middle, but you have here the sigma alpha to help you know that you're dealing with the aorist. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll remember that the aorist has its own unique middle endings, and it also has its own unique passive endings. And so let's take a look at those. Here, you'll notice that we have the distinctive theta eta, which is your clue that you're dealing with the aorist passive. Okay, once again, the second person singular has its own unique ending, lutheta, or lutheti, depending upon how you pronounce the iota. Because this is in the passive, you want to add the word be, so it's be loose or be loosened. Okay, and then again, right after that, we follow through with the same similar sounding pattern: lutheto, lutheta, luthetosan. And again, notice that in the third person singular and the third person plural in all these paradigms, that you want to introduce your translation with the words let her, him, it be loosed, or all right, you got to have that let. All right, let this happen is going to be the beginning of that. Finally, let's take a look at your aorists, your second aorist, that is. All right, and because second aorist is those group of 13 words that I taught you, these will only show up here. And if you'll look at this paradigm, what you'll notice is that your second aorist takes the same exact active endings as the present active. So the good news here is you don't have to learn a new set of endings. Okay, you still have your laba, labato, labetta, labatosan. The stem here, lab, comes from elabon, which means I take. Now you're going to be giving commands. Notice, as we've been looking at all these paradigms, what we notice whenever one gets out of the indicative mood, the need for the augment disappears, and so you'll have words without an augment. And so here you have laba, labato, labata, labatosan. Take, let her or let him, it or it take. Take in the plural, or let them take. Also, your second aorist middle imperative, okay, all right, will take also the same endings as your present middle passive. So labu, labesto, labesta, labestosan. Lastly, for this lesson is present imperative of Amy. I've given you here the full paradigm for both the second and the third person singular and plural, but what you'll notice is that story only gives you the third person singular, the esto, let her, him, or it be. That's because that's the one that's going to show up the most often. I've just given these to the rest of you so you can see how the pattern continues to fall out. Okay? But be aware that they sometimes show up as an Amy. Alright, with that in mind, let's take a look at a few practice sentences here on your screen. Notice the first sentence. Me krinata hina, me kritheta. Now, the me krinata, I already know that me goes with the subjunctive, and it also goes with the imperative. And when I look at the krinata there, it looks just like a present active indicative, second person plural, but I also know that it can sometimes also be the second person imperative. The me gives to me the clue that I need to know that I'm dealing with the imperative, so I know to parse it as an imperative. And then the hina me kritheta, all right, that is a present an aorist passive in a subjunctive, second person plural. And so what I would translate this as do not judge, or judge not in order that you should not be judged, or judge not lest you be judged. And this is from Matthew 7:1. My translation there is do not judge in order that you might not be judged. The next sentence we have there is a familiar one to you from the New Testament, from the mouth of Jesus. Ha echon chota akuein akuato. Ha echon is a participle, present active indicative, masculine singular nominative. The one who has. Chota, all right, that is a neuter plural accusative. Chota for ears. The one who has ears. Akuein, present active infinitive, to hear. And then akuato. All right, I got akuo there, all right, but I got the eto, and that eto kind of is my clue to know that I'm dealing with the imperative. All right, so I'm going to translate this as a present active imperative, third person singular. present active imperative, third person singular, and because it's third person singular, I know I need to have my translation begin with the statement let it. So I would say here, the one who has ears to hear, let him hear. Lastly, genetheto, ta thelema su. Genetheto comes from our deponent verb ginomai. All right, the theto. All right, the eto there, theto, tells me that I'm dealing with the imperative. I have a third person singular. Now, if I'm not careful, I would like to translate this or parse this as a aorist passive. I got to keep in mind that it is a deponent, so it's actually an aorist deponent imperative third person singular. So I want to translate this with the words let, and so in this case, because the word ginomai means become or happen, I would translate this as let your will be done, which of course is reflective of the Lord's Prayer. All right, that is the imperative mood, okay, that we will be looking at more further. And it is important because there are commands that are given, and we will look at those with our translation exercises. One other mood I want to introduce you to today, and I'm just going to do it briefly, is the optative mood. The optative mood is the mood of remote possibility. It's used to express a wish. Okay, quite often it is part of Paul's prayers. Now may the Lord bless you. Okay, may the Lord bring us to you. May the Lord make our paths straight to you. Whenever you hear that word may, okay, and you're looking at quite often in the context of prayers, this is what is known as the wish. Okay, this is the area of remote possibility. I will go over this in more detail in class, but I'm not going to ask you to actually memorize it. This mood, that's why there are no paradigms on this tutorial. I just want you to look it over, be familiar with it, and then you'll notice that it occurs 67 times in the Greek New Testament, and I will go over in class how you know the optative mood and when to know that you're dealing with it. So please do not devote any time to worrying about this. All right, with that in mind, in preparation for class, please learn the vocabulary for Chapter 18, memorize the endings for the imperative mood, and then, as usual, complete at least 10 of the Chapter 18 practice sentences that are in your workbook. All right, take care, and I will see you in class.